In the peaceful village of Omant, nestled between lush hills and winding rivers, there lived a hard-working trader named Akachi. Her life was one of both strength and sorrow. She had two beautiful twin daughters, Eoma and Afora, who were the light of her world. Akachi's husband, Dinga, had once been a popular palm wine tapper, known for his skill and charm. But fate had been unkind, and Dinga met an untimely death when he fell from a tall palm tree, leaving Akachi to shoulder the burden of raising their daughters alone. With determination, Akachi set up a small stall at the village market, selling fruit she carefully harvested from the village's trees. Each day she worked tirelessly, trading sweet oranges and ripe bananas, just to make sure her daughters would never go to bed hungry. Her love for them was deep, and her spirit unyielding. Though life had been hard, Akachi held her head high, always thinking of the future she hoped to give her daughters and of the legacy of love and resilience she would pass down to them. Eoma and Ifora were a sight to behold. With their round cheeks and wide, curious eyes, they captured the hearts of everyone who saw them. The market women often stopped by Akachi's stall, pausing from their trade to admire the twins. Their beauty was the talk of the village, and the older women, with their warm smiles, would joke playfully about marrying the twins to their sons in the future. One day, they'd say, Alma and Efora will be the queens of Omant. We'll see them in fine dresses with wedding songs echoing through the hills. The market itself was a vibrant scene. The sounds of laughter and haggling filled the air, blending with the rhythmic clink of metal as traders exchanged goods. Women swayed gently under the weight of baskets filled with yams and fish, their voices mingling with the chatter of children playing in the dirt, chasing each other between the fruit stands. So classic. The heat of the sun was tempered by the shade of towering mango trees that surrounded the village square, while a gentle breeze rustled through the leaves, carrying the scent of grilled meat from nearby stalls. Akachi's corner of the market was always lively, with people stopping by her stall to admire the beautiful fruits she carefully selected. The twins would sit in the shade, playing with wooden toys or helping her arrange the oranges and bananas, their laughter filling the space like music. But as the twins reached their first year, the joyful atmosphere was shattered by the sudden appearance of a rash on Eoma's soft skin. It started small, almost unnoticeable, but within days it spread. Akachi, who had always been so attentive, felt a rush of panic. Her heart beat faster as she examined the redness that covered Eoma's arms and legs. The sight of her daughter in pain made Akachi feel helpless, a feeling she wasn't used to. The village healer, a wise old woman named Neka, came by with her herbs, suggesting a mix of powders and ointments that she promised would help. Akachi, trusting the healer's years of experience, used the remedies diligently, hoping the rash would fade as quickly as it had appeared. For a time, it seemed as though the treatment was working. The rash began to lessen, and Akachi breathed a sigh of relief. But her worry never fully eased. Every day, she watched Eoma closely, making sure no new symptoms appeared. The tender care she gave her daughters showed the depth of her love, a love that had only deepened since Dinga's death, a love that was unshakable no matter the trials they faced. Her nights were filled with whispered prayers and quiet promises to herself that she would protect them no matter the cost. As the weeks passed, the rash faded completely, and Akachi's relief was palpable. But the experience had left a lasting impression on her. She knew that the world could be unpredictable, that misfortune could strike at any moment, and yet she held onto the belief that her strength and her love for Eoma and Ifora would see them through anything. Every moment spent with her daughters, watching them grow and learn, filled her with hope for the future, a future she would shape with every ounce of determination she had. As the years passed, the once playful and joyful twins began to change, and the village of Omant watched their growth with both wonder and sorrow. Eoma, once the picture of health, began to show signs of something far worse. At the age of 13, the rash that had once been a small worry returned. But this time, it spread quickly and aggressively. It covered her entire body, turning her smooth skin into a mass of red inflamed patches that burned with discomfort. The smell was unbearable, a pungent odor that lingered in the air, causing the other villagers to pull away in fear and sympathy. Akachi's heart broke as she watched her daughter suffer, but she refused to give up. Every morning, she would gently wash Eoma's skin with cool water, trying to ease the pain. But the rash only grew worse, leaving deep scars across her arms and legs. The local herbalists were consulted, their remedies an endless stream of crushed leaves, roots, and potions. But nothing seemed to work. when desperation crept into Akachi's soul as she watched her daughter's suffering. And she took Ayoma from healer to healer, traveling to neighboring villages in search of a cure, yet none could help. Every night, Akachi would sit beside Ayoma's bed, stroking her daughter's hair as she drifted off to sleep in pain, her body covered in bandages and ointments. Akachi would pray quietly, her hands clasped tightly together, wishing for a miracle. It seemed that no cure could touch the terrible affliction that had overtaken her precious child. Yet through it all, Akachi never once faltered in her love or in her resolve. In contrast, Ephora blossomed into a stunning young lady, untouched by the suffering that had consumed her twin sister. Her long dark hair framed her face like a crown, and her smooth skin was the color of rich earth. Her eyes sparkled with intelligence and joy, drawing the attention of many of the village's young men. Every time she walked through the village square, heads would turn, and whispers of admiration followed her. The young suitors, unable to resist her beauty, would approach her with shy smiles, hoping to win her heart. Yet they were often discouraged when they learned of her sister's condition, and the harsh realities of their family struggle left many feeling uncertain. Akachi, ever protective, warned them away. Her fierce love for both daughters, especially for Yoma, whom she feared might be forgotten in the shadow of her twin's beauty, made her cautious. She would smile gently at the men, but turn them away with firm words, knowing that the weight of their family's burdens was too heavy for most to carry. Aktiora, though understanding of her mother's protective nature, always showed a quiet resilience. She was kind and strong, her heart filled with compassion for her sister. She never complained, despite the fact that many suitors who once admired her soon turned their attention elsewhere, unable to look beyond the family struggles. Ephora's beauty never seemed to dull her spirit. Her love for her sister was unwavering, and every day she found ways to help Akachi care for Ayoma, her heart aching as she saw the toll the illness took on both her twin and their mother. Though she could never fully understand the depth of Ayoma's suffering, she vowed to remain by her side. Together, the twins remained an inseparable pair, their bond unbroken by illness or the changes of growing up. Even as the village admired Ephora's beauty, it was clear that her true strength lay in her devotion to her family. She would never abandon her sister, no matter how much the world outside seemed to shine with promises of a different future. As the years passed and Ayoma's condition worsened, the once close-knit community of Omant began to distance itself from Akachi's family. Ayoma's illness, with its relentless rash and unbearable smell, became the subject of hushed whispers and sidelong glances. Villagers, who had once greeted the twins with smiles and laughter, now avoided them. Akachi could feel the weight of their disapproval, the cruel stares when she walked through the market with her daughters. Her heart ached with every glance, but she refused to show her hurt. She kept her head high, walking proudly even as the sting of rejection cut deep. It wasn't just the physical pain of Ayoma's illness that wore Akachi down. It was the social isolation. Gossip spread like wildfire through the village. "Did you see Ayoma today?" some women would whisper. "She's becoming a burden." Others would shake their heads, their faces twisted with pity or distaste, and Akachi could see the discomfort in their eyes. She overheard the quiet ridicule. "How could a man want to marry into a family like that?" The harsh words stung more than any illness ever could. Akachi knew that many had stopped visiting their stall at the market, no longer wanting to be seen near a family plagued by such a condition. The shame of it all weighed heavily on her, yet she clung to her dignity and hope. She refused to let the gossip break her spirit, even as it threatened to tear her apart inside. One evening, as the sun began to dip behind the hills, casting the world in soft golden light, Ephora decided to take Yoma to the stream. The twins often went there to find peace, the sound of the water gently flowing over stones, offering a brief escape from the harsh realities of life. Ephora had always been protective of her sister, but she too needed moments of quiet to steady her heart. The walk to the stream was one of both serenity and tension. The air was cool and the path winding, with the scent of fresh grass mingling with the earthy aroma of the forest. The rustling of the leaves in the trees provided a soothing soundtrack to their steps, but the silence between the sisters felt thick with unspoken words. Ayoma, her face masked in quiet sorrow, walked slowly, her body weary from the constant discomfort. Ephora, walking beside her, kept her arm around her sister's shoulders, her presence a silent promise of support. As they reached the stream, they encountered 3 young maidens from the village, who had been sitting on the rocks near the water, laughing and talking among themselves. At first, they smiled at the twins, but their expressions quickly shifted as they saw Ioma. The maidens exchanged glances, their smiles fading into mockery. One of the maidens, a girl named Adeyeze, sneered and said, loud enough for Ioma to hear, "Look at her. Does she even know how she looks? She's a walking curse." The others giggled, their laughter cutting through the air like a knife. Another maiden chimed in, "She'll never be anything more than a burden to her mother. Who would want a girl like that?" This other maiden, Ephora's heart clenched with a fierce protectiveness for her sister. In an instant, her gentle demeanor shifted, and she stood tall, her voice sharp and unwavering. "How dare you?" she shouted, stepping forward. "You speak of my sister as if she's not human, but she is. You should be ashamed of yourselves." Her eyes burned with anger, but her love for Ioma burned brighter. The maidens were taken aback by Ephora's sudden outburst. They tried to laugh it off, but there was a clear unease in their eyes. One of them, sensing the tension, stepped back, but Adeyeze stood her ground. "What do you know of what's right?" she taunted. "You're no better than her, always hiding behind her." Ephora's voice trembled with the weight of her emotions, but she did not back down. "I know what it means to love and protect," she said, her gaze never leaving the maidens. "You can't understand that because you've never been tested like we have." The confrontation ended as quickly as it began, the maidens retreating to the other side of the stream, leaving the twins standing there, both shaken by the encounter. Ioma, who had been quiet throughout, now stood with her head lowered, her body tense with humiliation. The words of the maidens echoed in her mind, and despite Ephora's fierce defense, the sting of their insults had sunk deep into her heart. Ephora, too, felt the weight of the encounter, her emotions swirling. Her heart ached for her sister, and though she had stood up to defend her, the hurt in Ioma's eyes lingered in her own soul. Keeping still, Wally squeezed Ioma's hand. As they walked back home in silence, the bond between the sisters felt both stronger and more fragile. Ephora's protective love for Ioma had never wavered, but the emotional toll of the encounter was clear. The world was cruel, and sometimes even the fiercest love could not shield them from the harshness of others. Still, Ephora would never stop fighting for her sister, no matter what the world threw at them. The sisters, though scarred by the encounter, knew that as long as they had each other, they could endure anything. One bright afternoon, as the sun bathed the village in its warm embrace, Ephora ventured into the forest to gather herbs for her mother. It was a ritual she had grown accustomed to, wandering the quiet paths where the air smelled of wildflowers and earth. The forest always offered her a sense of peace, a brief respite from the burden of her sister's condition and the ever-present judgment of the villagers. As she moved through the trees, her basket growing heavier with each step, she suddenly caught sight of a figure ahead. A young man, tall and lean, was kneeling by a patch of herbs, his hands skillfully collecting them. He looked up as Ephora approached, and for a moment, their eyes met. His gaze lingered on her face, not with the usual admiration or curiosity that others gave, but with something deeper, something thoughtful. His eyes were soft and kind, as though he had seen the world in all its beauty and pain and understood both. Ephora, taken aback by the intensity of his gaze, stopped in her tracks. The young man stood and smiled warmly, his expression both respectful and genuine. "Good day," he said, in a voice that carried a calm strength. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." Ephora, a bit flustered but grateful for the kindness in his tone, smiled shyly in return. "No, not at all," she said. "I was just gathering herbs for my mother." "I see," he replied, stepping aside to allow her closer. "I'm Chica," he said, offering his hand in a gesture of friendship. "I'm a traveler, visiting from the neighboring village." Ephora took his hand, noting the firm but gentle grip. "I'm Ephora," she introduced herself, feeling a flicker of warmth in her chest. "I live in Oman." The brief introduction, though simple, felt like a breath of fresh air. For a moment, the weight of her responsibilities and the gossip of the village faded away, leaving only the two of them in the quiet solitude of the forest. Wale looked as they spoke. Chica's gaze occasionally drifted toward Ephora's face, his curiosity evident. Ephora, ever conscious of her sister's condition, instinctively grew tense. She had grown used to people only seeing her for her beauty, but she knew that with her family's struggles, this young man would likely ask questions. She hesitated for a moment before he softly spoke, his voice laced with genuine concern. "Forgive me for asking," Chica said, "but I couldn't help noticing how close you are with your sister. Is she well? I've heard whispers of a sickness in your family." Ephora's heart tightened. The mention of Yoma's condition always brought a wave of sadness and frustration, but she saw the concern in Chika's eyes. It wasn't the usual pity or idle curiosity. This was compassion.